Hi guys, Anthony and Bob Barker are back again, and today we are tackling some workout equipment storage for one of Bob Barker's favorite people in the world, his grandma and my mom. So let's get into the build.
Alright, so for this build, the whole goal really was just to get a decent little storage space for some of the workout equipment that my mom uses. Because right now she just had it kind of laying on the ground and it just wasn't very optimal. So I went on down to the box store and got a couple pieces of wood that cost about a total of 25 bucks. Brought them back home and we're getting ready to cut them down to what we need. So I'm using this little scrap piece of wood there next to my fence just as the stop for the size that I want. Because you don't want to run that edge against the fence as you're using the sled like that. And then this way you'll still get the accurate repeatable cuts. Now this would have been probably easier to do on the miter saw, but mine isn't quite big enough to cut this wide of a piece of wood. So instead, I'll go ahead and just use the sled for it. So here I'm just straightening out these edges. That way they're nice and clean when we join them together. And for these ones, what I'm doing is I'm going to just cut a few of them down to size, and then we're going to join them together because the depth that I was looking for, we didn't have that size at the box store. So I figured we can just make it ourselves. And for this one, I have them labeled exactly where it's going to be. What I'm going to do is I run it through this way, and for the other joining piece, I actually flip it over, turn around so it's the same edge, and then I run it through that way, just in case the blade isn't completely square. When I put them together, it's still going to go together perfectly, and it's not going to create a bow in the wood. So once we have our pieces all ready, I just threw up a whole bunch of 2x4s on my workbench and get ready to glue them together. Of course, I put some tape on the 2x4s, that way the glue didn't stick to them. And I mainly have those there just so it's easier for the clamps to sit in place. Now, the parallel clamps would probably be better for this than the F-type clamps that I have, but I don't have any of the parallel clamps yet. So, of course, like always, making do with what we have. So I'm going to put the 2x4s there on top as well, just to kind of sandwich it together so it doesn't bow out. And I put one little clamp on each edge where it's joining just to keep those straight, because this isn't the greatest quality lumber that I'm working with. So I need to make sure that I keep all the edges as close to perfect as I can so it doesn't create too much sanding for me later. And then once I get all of those clamps on, I just get a damp rag and wipe off all the excess glue squeeze out. Just a little bit less work later if you take care of it right now. And these pieces that we're putting together, they're going to be the sides of the small cabinet that we're building. So of course we need two of them, and I don't have too many good clamps for this, so I'm just making do with whatever I have to do them both at the same time and save a little time. Then once those are all done, we can take them out and just sand it down. Now I'm not being super careful with the sanding for these ones, because my mom likes a little bit more of a rustic look, so it's okay if it's a little banged up or you see some swirl marks in this particular piece. So next up, we're getting back on the table saw here, and we'll be cutting down the pieces that we're going to be using for the shelves, the trim pieces, and the supports that's going to be holding the shelves. Now this wasn't the greatest wood, so it actually started to bow on me a little bit as I was running it through the table saw. But I just kind of take my time, go slow, and just make sure you're safe with it. Then it's over to the miter station. Since we got them all cut down to width, we got to get them cut down to length, and of course using the stop block just for repeatable cuts, and we know everything is going to fit together properly once we start to assemble it. And for these ones, I decided I'm just going to use pocket hole screws from underneath to hold all the trim pieces on. I didn't really feel like doing pin nails or that for this particular one. And on the bottom one, I'm actually going to use the pocket holes to attach it to the side pieces as well. So I just spent my time, get all the holes drilled, put some glue on, and clamp these together. That way it doesn't run on me as I'm screwing these in. Now you could put all these pieces on after you attach the shelves to the cabinet itself, but there's no really particular reason why I didn't. I just didn't feel like it. I wanted to do it now, so I did. And it still came out pretty well. So then after I finish doing all of those screws, back over to the table saw again. Now for these ones, I am cutting the side pieces of the little cabinet to the final width. The joining the two pieces made them a bit oversized, but then I can get rid of the edges and get it perfect how I want it. And here I'm just splitting some in half, and these are the ones that we're going to be using for the supports. And just to dress them up a little bit after I cut them up, I took it over to the miter saw and just put an angle on each edge. It just makes it a little bit nicer and it hides it a little bit as well. So next is the assembly. So I just got all my pieces together over here on my workbench, and basically I'm just gluing and screwing everything together. So I'm just going to do one side here with the bottom shelf, and like I said, I'm doing this one with just pocket hole screws, and then we attach the other side as well. Now I originally was going to put some feet on this one, but I actually decided it looked just fine once I got it there without them. So now we're going to put on the supports that are going to hold the other two shelves. So I'm just marking out where I want them, and then doing some glue and putting these in place, and then we'll screw them. Now I did pre-drill these ones, that way we can screw it in easily and it's not going to split, and the countersink will hide the screws from view. Mark on the sides too, just to make sure that those are pretty evenly spaced front to back as well. So with those in, then we can do a quick little tester to see how it fits. Then I'm using this right angle thingamabobber just to pre-drill these ones, because I forgot to do that before I attached them to the sides of the cabinet. So once I was happy with that one, we just repeat the same process for the middle shelf as well. Just mark it all out, screw it all in place, and of course using lots of glue on there as well. And as you can see, the edges of those supports are set in a little bit. That way it just kind of hides itself a little bit along with that angled profile of it. So then with the supports there, I just clamped it all together and just did the screws from underneath. And after that first screw, I tilted the whole cabinet on its side just because it was a little bit easier to reach that with that same angle thingamabobber that I used before. I just barely got this thing. It's actually kind of handy to have. I'm surprised I didn't have that before. So now that the whole thing is assembled, I just did one final sanding, in particular making sure I softened up all of those edges. I didn't use a round over bit. I just hit it with my sander, and it still creates a nice kind of rounded over profile, just a little bit smaller than the bits that I have. So once we were happy with that, then my mom showed up and got to staining. Now her whole idea with this one is she actually wanted to mix two different stains together and kind of create some extra movement in the wood itself. So she didn't have any particular plan beforehand. It was more she just wanted to see the grain of the wood and kind of see what felt right as she was going. And she's using the same rag for both of these stains. She doesn't mind if it kind of mixes up a little bit because it kind of helps with the blending as well. So alternating it created a nice little kind of striped pattern going on there. And then after she was done with it, it all kind of blended in a little bit better. And of course, the supervisor had to make sure the work was up to his standards. And so just a little bit more stain in there, creating more interest with the blending of those two stains. And then this is what we ended up with. I think the end product came out really well, and it fits all the equipment and keeps it a little bit more organized for her.
All right, and that's the build. It was super cheap, super easy, a one-day build. And I think it came out really nice, especially with the stain mixing that my mother did. So that's gonna be it for this episode, and we'll see you guys in the next one.